You know what, let's have a look perhaps at some of our deck lists, because I happen to know that I finally got my wish. Bubble Buddy is on Leona. No baited hooks, but not needed.
Yeah, not needed when you have powerful cards like Fiora, Irelia. We've, of course, got the big green Leona that can enter ready as well. What I really love about this, Zenith Blade, I think, is an incredibly underrated card. Yes, it's a signature spell, so people are not necessarily thinking about it just in their normal deck building routine unless you're purposefully going in on Leona. But when you get hit with a Zenith Blade, if you haven't played against a Leona for a long time, you're like, oh, wow. Maybe this is the reason to play this Legend, because that card is good.
Yeah, that card's really, really good. A few other things that stick out to me in this deck list, kind of the normal calm stuff here. Disciplines, Defies, On Guard, Single Not So Fast, all that stuff we've become expected to see. Mask of Foresight is a fun one. Some 2-drops, Telecon Herder. This is all the stuff we know, including 3 Donnies and 3 GA, so really trying to protect a calm unit like we've seen from decks like Yasuo. Aurelia obviously wants to do this as well. 1 Call to Glory, really like that one. It's a pretty easy way to get buffs in Leona, because whenever you stun something, you get to go ahead and give a buff, and this is basically a +2 on that unit if you take the buff away by removing the buff to pay the cost instead of paying the actual cost, or we can give a different unit +3. So a pump that is effectively free. One of the few free spells that Riftbound really has is Call to Glory, and a single copy is always nice. Battlefield's also looking kind of interesting, wanting to play kind of a longer game here. Aspirant's Climb, Rockfall Path, and Sigil of the Storm. So places that people really don't generally want to go, or can't go in the case of Rockfall Path.
Yeah, absolutely. This is signaling that this is a player that wants the game to go a little bit longer, likely because of cards like the Irelia, like the Leona. You're trying to set up this big end game. You also want to be able to be given the opportunity to draw a portion of your deck with cards like Stellacorn Herder. And if you stumble in the early game, you'll notice there's not a lot of early game units outside of the Lonely Poro. Your early plays could be things like developing the Guardian's Angel, developing something like that Mask of Foresight that you highlighted. But otherwise, in those early turns, you're not going to be developing a lot of might on the board, so you do need these battlefields that will lean toward a longer game plan for you to come online.
Yeah, a lot of ways to protect your units, a lot of ways to maybe manipulate Condex. With 3 Thwonk in the main, that is a lot of that card. That card is really good when your opponent is trying to play offense, because you cannot stun them defensively with Thwonk, although thankfully your chosen champion can get a lot of that done. And of course, with Repeat, you can really turn the tides of combat, which Bubble Buddy is going to need, because he is back. We knew we were going to see it eventually. It is Draven on stream for the first time today. Don't let us say that we don't show you diverse legends, but I mean, this is one of, if not the deck to beat.
Yeah, this is the most represented deck in the field today. Again, retaking that mantle from Aurelia, who had it in Lille. But the thing that jumps out to me here is that it is running a very similar list to the best of. However, Beast Below on the top end, it's a big 8 might unit that also has a very powerful effect. This is something that might catch the Leona player off guard. The Leona player also only had 1 Not So Fast in the main deck, so less ways to stop this interaction.
Yeah, definitely can be a toughie. I feel like Beast Below is a card that's picking up some chatter here and there. Very powerful, if a bit expensive. And of course, CTCG, that is Challenger TCG, a team that is pretty prolific in Riftbound even in these early days. So going to be a tough mountain to climb against the best deck of the format. But, you know, you come into a tournament like this and you expect to have to play this deck at some point. So one of 2 things is what you've thought. Either I know what this matchup is like and I'm prepared to play it, or I'm hoping I dodge it for most of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I was highlighting something like that Beast Below. Beast Below is a card that performed very well for me at the pre-riffs, and it's a very good here, obviously, because a very well-known team is utilizing it, but I'm curious to see if it's expected.
Yeah, we'll have to find out, because the game is ready. Let's see who wins. Legend that has never made day 2, that is Leona's cross to bear, unfortunately, versus the best deck in the room, or at least one of the best decks in the room. I think maybe the jury is a little out still on if it is Aurelia or Draven's time to shine at the top, but certainly they're both occupying the very tippy top of the representation and likely the strength of the metagame as well. This will be a fun one. I think I don't know how much experience Draven's have against Leona, but already starting things off with something a little different, because that's Zorn Warrens.
Yeah, we have Zorn Warrens on the side of Relivia, and then Bubble Buddy with the Sigil of the Storm. The big reason that I'm also saying ooh to myself is we know both of these players are utilizing Aspirant's Climb, so if this goes to game 3, we could have a situation where 2 of the 3 go the extra mile because of Climb being in the arsenal of both players.
Does Climb say you have to get an extra point to win? You need 1 additional point to win the game? So if there's 2 Climbs, are we playing to 10? Because remember, we know about Climb, but they don't know about Climb.
That's right. Well, let's just wait and see. let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Let's find out. Well, Bubble Buddy certainly representing Leona here with very, very shiny runes and a nice ult-out Leona. But Overzeal's fan to kick things off, as Draven is the player going first, thanks to those 4 runes. So getting on board early with Draven always feels pretty good. And Overzeal's fan, not as many fans running around these days, a little weaker thanks to both some rules changes and in general just Draven getting a little powered down thanks to the bans. But still a very good unit early, and getting on base and staying there is something that these Draven decks want to do. And it is 2 more 2s, Pouty Poro and Overzeal's fan number 2 joining the base.
Yeah, and I was holding my breath for a moment. I hadn't seen the hand on the side of Relivia yet, and I wondered if this was going to be a Poro into something like a Hopeful, which would have been a lot of early might. But Bubble Buddy just sticking with the game plan of knowing it's going to be a slow start. Again, outside of Lonely Poro, not a lot of early units, but did develop that Guardian's Angel, followed up with the Fiora, equipping the Guardian's Angel, does activate her additional effects because she is now mighty.
Yep, gets Deflect, Ganking, and Shield, which is quite a few keywords here for Fiora. And as we can see, the way Bubble Buddy has constructed this deck, definitely looking to build some bigger units and have them be protected, kind of like the temper strategies we see in a lot of different comp lists. Zhonya's available as well. So this Fiora going to have a few lives if she needs them. I'm going to start with Mask here and start moving on in. You have to imagine, off to the Zone Warrens you go. I too would like to filter a card. And Relivia gives the thumbs up. Going to be 2 points to 1 now as our 2 undefeated players here in round 4 battling off in game number 1 as Lonely Poro is going to hit the bin. Don't really need it anymore. Going to draw a better card, hopefully. Oh, that card's pretty good. Zenith's Blade off the top.
Yeah, and a lot of times that Poro is just meant to get you an additional card anyway, so it's kind of doing double duty with this usage. I like this Charm here, so we're going to see Charm on the Forerunner while Relivia is fully exhausted on the rune side, so this will go ahead and pop that, create those baby bots. But one of the things that I was getting ready to mention specifically, we mentioned 3 main deck Thwonks on the side of Bubble Buddy. With the popularity of Ferris Forerunner in the meta right now, you expect potentially a lot of units to be available, so that repeat actually could be very important later in the game as that comes up.
And might look like the might totals didn't add up to what this Fiora needed them to, but that shield coming in clutch.
Yes.
Be the 7th extra point of might, as Zhonya's just going to get played from hand here. You do see this from time to time. In fact, I know there was at least 1 Aurelia list in Lille running around with 3 Zhonyas in their main in game 1, just planning to play it open and try and have bigger turn to protect the princess, as it were. So we'll see if Fiora can stem the tide, because there are 5 units on the other side of them, and that is quite a bit of might. It's 12 total there, with 3 2s and 2 3s.
Yeah, this is interesting because between the Guardian's Angel and the Hourglass, even if Relivia wanted to throw everything at that Fiora, they're ultimately trading multiple cards for 1 of those preserving gear. And so I think Bubble Buddy was fine with leaving the Fiora over there. It's also saying that you might have to challenge me some other way because of the ganking, but we see that beast below that I mentioned earlier, and this is going to be huge.
Yeah, Pouty Poro going to go back. Maybe not the value you would have wanted from returning that unit, but getting effectively a big rebuke on a stick. That's 8 might on the beast below. Now going to occupy that Sigil of the Storm. Has to recycle the rune as a result, but that deals with the Fiora, and there was really no other way to do that effectively apart from, I guess, rebuke, but that is a big problem dealt with there for Relivia.
And we have the mech going into the Zon Warrens on the other side. Again, more filtering, so a discard and then a draw from Relivia. And I think this is a heads-up play, moving some additional units onto the battlefields, but specifically it's an overzealous fan on both sides. So you have to not only overcome the might, but also go through potentially that sacrificial defensive trigger as well. And with Bubble Buddy having no units on the board because of the beast below, it's going to slow things down even further. Meanwhile, Relivia has 4 points.
Yeah, 4 points to 1. Unfortunately means that even green Leona is not going to enter ready. You need to be within 3 points of the victory score for that. So instead, it's another Fiora made mighty once again, thanks to that Guardian Angel equip. And Zenith Blade could let us move in here, but again, Overzealous Fan makes that pretty bad, you have to say. And I think the things you hate to see whenever you're playing against the Draven is Overzealous Fan and a friend at a battlefield. And doesn't really matter the size, whether it's a 3-might mech or an 8-might beast below, both situations are bad. And Relivia already racing up to 6 points in this game, 5 full points ahead in this one. Definitely a tough spot to pull out of in game 1 here. And what's the play? Do you just chill with your fans again? Already you were looking to maybe win by holding. Could commit another unit, maybe that mech or maybe something else from hand to reinforce one of these battlefields. But if you're, you know, this kind of setup, pretty good at taking a single battlefield, even if you do have to go in twice, although that is obviously a lot more annoying. But taking both seems very tough here.
Yeah, it does seem tough. And again, we noted we have the Thwonks in the main deck, but nothing like the Rune Prisons, for example. So a lot of the offensive combat tricks outside of Zenith Blade really aren't there. I believe there was a one of On Guard. This is one of those situations where Bubble Buddy's kind of in that dreaded, you know, I'm playing a hold deck and I'm not holding anything situation. And this is why you can't necessarily go all in on one strategy. When you're playing Riftbound, you need to have a way to not just camp on sites and not just take them, but sometimes you need a little bit of both. Yeah,
and Draven just kind of good at combat in general. So good at both those things, especially with Overzealous Fan in the mix. So going to be that mech reinforcing, waddling on down to the Zorn Warrens. And another card from hand here to at least reinforce something. Going to be the top side. That Pouty Pyro we actually knew was in hand. Yep. To the bounce of the beast below. And Draven usually likes to hold up, you know, 2 runes or so. So maybe going to hold a few up. Hide a hidden card. That one is not Fight or Flight. Thank goodness. But still plenty of good options here for these decks.
Yeah. So with the Rune Recycle, the only thing that is like really worth noting on the side of Bubble Buddy is that you don't have to play around Rebuke at the moment. Only 1 Chaos Power available on the other side. But again, when you have all that might, and you have an Overzealous Fan on both spots, and now there's a hidden card, there's still a lot that you have to plow through to even get on one battlefield. And with Relivia at 6 points, even getting through one means you're going to have to get through the other one on the other side, and you have to play around any sort of retakes. So way behind at the current game state, Bubble Buddy is potentially going to have to make a miracle happen to get things going back in the other direction.
Yeah, good note on the Rebuke not being up. I have to wonder if that's just a very minor mistap out of Relivia, because energy is, you know, is color ambivalent. Doesn't matter what color it is.
Yeah.
But well, left all the Furies open, so needed to recycle when you're hiding something. So.
Yeah, it's mostly you just need another Chaos Rune there. So you could have, you know, open Fury runes, but as long as you have the Chaos runes on the board, you could still pay for the power, but it's just the one.
I think, was there not 2? That's what, because did Relivia recycle a Chaos rune? That's my question. Because that's what my memory says, but it could be wrong. You know,
yeah, I believe you are correct as well, but maybe we both misremembered it. Either way, we have a Zenith Blade going off now.
Back into this bottom battlefield. Get kicked out once, never again, as the buff also goes off thanks to Leona's legend ability. So stun a unit out of battlefield, move a friendly unit to the battlefield, Tide Turner away, put the Overzealous Fan. That is completely gross. Getting yet another defense trigger out of Overzealous Fan. And now I'm going to push you away. I did not know that worked, but it does. And that's going to be enough to win at this point, unless Bubble Buddy can get back on one of these battlefields and take them back over.
Yeah, because the move triggers a reaction window, and your hidden cards can be played at reaction speed. You can do the Tide Turner before the attacker and defender designations are then listed, and then once the Overzealous Fan is listed as a defender, now you have the option for the Overzealous Fan trigger. So again, it's just a really neat interaction and a heads-up play by Relivia to shut down that push, and that might just result in a Game 1 win because Bubble Buddy does not have a lot of other options.
Another one. It's Zenith Blade the second. Going to be moving on in. I'm going to stun the other mech this time. Really going to win the combat at this stage. Does that also work if it's not Zenith Blade doing the move? Like if it's a regulation move? Because I don't think the chain opens at that point, does it? I could be wrong. We'll move on. We'll answer it later.
It doesn't matter because it was a Zenith Blade.
Yes, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a Zenith Blade, and this one's also a Zenith Blade, which is good enough to move on in.
Big fan of crossing that bridge when we get there.
That's, you know what, that's very fair here. Fiora, though, does do the job she needed to do and take over one of the battlefields, get a point, and at least stave off the win for now. But there is still a whole host of might, 12 to be exact, at that top battlefield. And Relivia only at 1 point. Played for the win at 6 points, holding to 8. Still good enough to hold to 7 and just try and do it all again. And this time, Fiora, she may have ganking, but she is going to have trouble cracking through that top battlefield.
So really important for Relivia here on the channel did find a second Chaos Rune. There was a world where if 2 Fury Runes were channeled, Relivia would not be able to even fake having a Rebuke available. There is a lot of might there, as you had pointed out. 2 Zenith Blades already played by Bubble Buddy. We know that there is, however, the green Leona available, right? Our Calm Leona that could potentially jump into combat. You might be able to go 1 in and then 1 in to take advantage of the additional might from Mask of Foresight, if that's the option. But Bubble Buddy still needs a miracle, because even if you also go through all of this might, Relivia is still essentially on game point, and Bubble Buddy only has 2 so far. So you're not just playing to not lose, you're also still trying to find a way to continue to score points and win.
Yeah, and that's, you know, assuming the board state doesn't change. And right. It's still a turn for Relivia to have after awakening all his runes. So just says, you know what, that's good enough. You can have it back, get a point for holding, and we'll see what happens here.
Yeah, and even if Bubble Buddy is able to do the bunker busting, alliteration incredibly intended there, the other thing that's kind of breathing down Bubble Buddy's neck is the presence of that Draven in the champion zone, because Relivia is already up to 7 points, so that next turn can hit the board as a 10 might unit for potential retake stuff. We do see the Calm Leona enter play, and we're not going to take advantage of, you know, 1 in and then 1 in, kind of daisy chaining them for the Mask of Foresight, just going to send them both.
Yeah, can't really afford to, because couldn't take out the Beast Blow, and that Spinning Axe is going to be enough for game number 1. Relivia with Draven picking up yet another win here, but there are still 2 more games potentially left in this one, Charmer.
Hopefully.
That sounded like a lot of copium, because it was.
I mean, listen, Leona is definitely a deck that I think can hold well if you can get onto a location and have the thwonks and things to back it up. The problem is that these Draven lists are very good at also getting on location early, as we saw in that game with the overzealous fans. That was a blazing fast start from Relivia, while unfortunately Bubble Buddy's list, without the Lonely Poro being in the opener, was only able to develop a gear, then play a Fiora. So you're really looking at game 3 before you're even ending up on a location. That could be problematic. And again, the retakes can be an issue. Draven loves combat. If there was a legend that could be personified as Fight Me Bro,
yep,
it's Draven.
It's Draven, for sure. As game 2 is underway, it is Aspirant's Climb on the Draven side and Rockfall Path on the other. I just want to say, I'm pretty confident I'm remembering the deck list correctly. Those 2 overzealous fans felt really bad on those battlefields, and I think that's the only 2 in Relivia's main. So, you know, sometimes feels good. As Guardian Angel going to be the first play of this game.
We also know that it was the single Beast Below, and that did work. We highlighted it when we saw the deck list, and then, of course, it came down at a crucial time and was a mountain of might as well as an incredible effect. Here, instead, we see the new, very popular Rek'Sai Breacher hitting the table on the side of Relivia. This is a card that these Draven lists and, well, as well as Annie and some of the others have been utilizing because of the accelerate both on this unit itself, but as well as on your units from the champion zone.
Even more. Ooh, Hopeful going to join the party as well. That is a very good second turn there, thanks to extra rune channeled for going second. Rek'Sai Breacher on curve into Rek'Sai Breacher number 2 and a Noxus Hopeful at the discount. So a, you know, cool 10 might already assembled. Fiora is back with her GA. Mighty and ready to defend the Rockfall Path, but even though Bubble Buddy getting the first point on the board, it is tough to deal with what's happening. Although I do spy a Thwonk that might be looking pretty good here. Although the problem is, if you want to hold up Thwonk and have it be effective, you really have to hold it up with repeat, and it's really obvious what you're holding up when you do that. So Mask of Foresight going to be deployed instead with the Guardian Angel. I think Bubble Buddy assessing that, you know what, this Fiora can afford to go down once.
There is additional tech there as well. We saw the Discipline in hand, so if they are not respecting the potential additional might, that is an option. You could also use that to draw and then maybe get lucky. We know there was a one of on guard in the main, so there are some instances where you can chain together plays, but right now Relivia is, again, just continuing to develop might, slam that Ferris Forerunner, and play it safe. Likely wants to assemble enough might that they can go into combat with their runes and their energy available to pay for some of those combat tricks. And with Aspirant's Climb, also knows that this is a game that's not going to be going fast. Bubble Buddy gets the hold point, and then because of Fiora's ganking, also gets this conquer.
Yeah, I was going to say, can be tough with strategies like this because you usually have one really big, impressive unit, but only one unit, and that can make it tough to get points when there are, you know, 2 different battlefields you could be going to. But that ganking Fiora does pick up when she is mighty, and as we've noted, it's very easy for her to become so in this deck. Actually, lets Bubble Buddy race pretty effectively here. The problem, as you mentioned, is that Relivia is clearly happy to play a bit slower here, and I did say it was, you know, 10 might initially with the Hopeful and the 2 breaches. They also have Assault, so they're even bigger on the offense, which is where Relivia is going to be looking to in just a moment. Whether it's this turn or the next, we'll find out soon, but can't imagine Fiora is not going to have any friends at Aspirant's Climb.
The interesting bit is because Bubble Buddy left up all of the energy, Relivia now has to kind of guess, what am I dealing with? What is available? There is 18 might when attacking, as you mentioned, with the Assault on those Rek'Sais. Relivia could also have their own combat tricks, but what is it that Bubble Buddy has available on their own defensive side, whether it's Thwonks, whether it's Disciplines, but also counter spells, right?
Yep.
So if you're going to go in and you're maybe considering a Rebuke, or if you're going to try to use a Falling Star or anything like that, you're also worried about that answer from Bubble Buddy. So Relivia, I think, is going to just be patient, think things through here, and decide what is the acceptable amount to send.
I think this is a nice moment, though, from Draven, kind of demonstrating, like, this is a deck with some range, right?
Yeah.
Game 1, on the play, just curved out, played all the 2-drops, got on the battlefields early, and just tried to hold them as long as possible. We'll hold that thought because Relivia has decided that the time for action is now. 3 points is enough of a lead. I'm going to try and cut that down to size. That is 6, 10, 14 might, and Thwonk is going to do some real nasty work here. Just pointing at the Ferris Forerunner, does not want to go again. This will also buff Fiora thanks to Leona's Legend ability, so it's 1 extra might as well for the Fiora. But taking 6 might out of the equation, leaving 8 on the battlefield is where Bubble Buddy wants to start.
I saw 2 points, so it might have actually still been repeated.
Did not?
I didn't see the paying for it, though, so perhaps it was just
not exhaust enough runes for that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it was just maybe trying to figure out where to assign damage.
Yep. Makes sense. So being okay with Ferris Forerunner being the unit left and conquering away, decides that killing 2 units is better than just killing 1 that makes 2 mechs, which I think is a pretty reasonable thing to think. So Fiora is going to lose her GA. Still get her buff, though, so still mighty.
Yep.
With all those 5 might, so has, I guess, Deflect, which is maybe relevant if there's a follow-up here that can maybe attack the base. But Kai'Sa Survivor going to be the follow-up play here for Relivia. And Accelerate is available, but is not being pressed just yet. And in fact, not going to be pressed right now. Does not want to go to the other battlefield. Doesn't need to draw a card. Again, playing patient here. Kind of leveraging the card quality of Draven and just saying, you know what, it's a climb game. I can afford to be patient.
Both players actually being incredibly patient because, as you noted, Bubble Buddy did not pay the repeat on the Thwonk, instead wanted to maintain maximum runes available, kind of showing your opponent, I have more, so maybe you should slow it down. I will say getting the buff also makes that decision a little bit easier because you will still have Fiora active. It is mighty, so I'm going to go over here to the Rockfall path.
Often true with Mask of Foresight if she's alone. So a lot of different ways to get 1 extra might, but Delacorn being played here, and I did spy a Zenith Blade in Bubble Buddy's hand. Feels, there's 2 actually, alongside Neurelia. Feels maybe attractive to what a move this Delacorn, because of course whenever Delacorn Hoda moves, you draw 1, something we've seen a bunch of different calm strategies utilize to great effect, but Bubble Buddy get to play it safe here, and unfortunately that means that Delacorn Hoda is currently vulnerable to Falling Star.
That is a concern, but when you're leaving the runes up, again, you might just be bluffing to your opponent. I have the counter spell. You also could just get lucky and they don't have it. I like, again, this slow, patient play from this position from Bubble Buddy because you have the points lead. This is the reverse of game 1 where you were so far behind that you really needed to find a window and you kind of had some urgency. But right now, there's not a lot of urgency on the side of Bubble Buddy. And taking the gamble, as you said, sometimes the fun thing is the dangerous thing, but taking a gamble and maybe getting a huge Stellacorn turn with these Zenith Blades makes sense.
So that is 8 might total coming in. It's actually 8 versus 8 after the shield procs. So that discipline is going to make it +3, which means right now Bubble Buddy is winning this combat. And if there's one thing that's pretty important against Draven, it is winning combats, because when they win combats, they draw more cards.
That is correct, and that is the one, I think, difference maker and why Draven has been so popular in the meta, because when you're looking at these two decks, on the surface, you could see where they're maybe similar. They want to get into combat, they want to play their tricks, but Draven separates itself when you have Kai'Sa drawing cards, your Legend draws cards, and we're going to see that Zenith Blade now, so the Stellacorn Herder is going to go in, it gets buffed because of the Leona Legend trigger, and also you're going to see the draw card from the move. So again, the patience paying off from Bubble Buddy, kind of sandbagging.
Really nice. It does mean that Kai'Sa is going to maybe trade with the Stellacorn, because it's only got 4 might and it's still in combat, so it has to get something done. But Rek'Sai being stunned after the Spinning Axe got attached is pretty rough as far as getting them stunned, though. But Relivia is not done exhausting runes and maybe playing more cards. Is it second Spinning Axe time? First one looked pretty good. Oh, I see a switcheroo.
Oh. Switcheroo will be enough. Yes, we're going to see that. Just played from hand. This will be enough to kind of shift things in the favor of Relivia. And again, Draven, so many combat tricks. When you get down to it, you got to worry about the rebukes, you got to worry about the axes, and you have to worry about switcheroo. When all is said and done here, Bubble Buddy should still, I believe, have just enough might to take out one of these units.
Believe so, and as the rule goes, if stunned units are left at a battlefield, defenders win. Attackers have to leave. Unfortunately, that's enough might to take out all the units, so Kai'Sa just wins instead, and so does Draven, which means 2 cards get drawn off this Conquer in addition to the point.
And that's, again, where that difference might start to rear its head. Calm decks do traditionally tend to lean on Stellacorn Herder and or some of the effects where they replace themselves, right? We saw that discipline earlier, but Draven just needs to play the game.
Yep.
Right? You just get rewards for winning combats, and that is very oftentimes a lot easier because you don't have to worry about protecting a unit like the Stellacorn Herder.
Looks like this axe is going to go back onto a unit, which makes sense. It's going to go away otherwise if it's not attached. So considering which unit, is it the Pautipara or is it Kai'Sa? It is going to be the Pautipara, so a little deflect added to that 2 might, making it a little 5 in the backline. And the rough thing here is that it feels like Bubble Buddy kind of picked a line early on. So you know what? I'm just going to leave that 4 over there. I don't want to break this. It's tough. I don't like going there. I don't like taking out this unit. It makes too many mechs. So I'm just going to say, you know what? I have a points lead. Let me just try and hold the other side and, you know, win that race. And unfortunately, with the Stellacorn and the Fiora going into the trash, it is very tough to win a race which you are now behind in.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those matches that in the future, it would not surprise me if Bubble Buddy watches it back, because I am not going to say that any of these lines are correct or incorrect, but there are a lot of great decision trees, decision moments where, you know, again, pointing out whether or not that repeat got paid and maybe you don't lose the Guardian Angel and then what happens going forward, right? Kind of just reevaluating what were the decisions? Do I feel confident that that was the correct one? How would I have played differently going the other direction? A lot of times VOD review, when you go to these big events and you end up on camera, are great ways to get better as a player.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Draven just is a deck that constantly forces you to make tough decisions. And when you are wrong, he is very punishing. One of the reasons, again, you said the deck is so popular. So, Leona from the Champ Zone. This one is 1 eye attack, stun an enemy unit here, and it has shield. So pretty good for a 4 might unit that feels like a 5, because when she attacks on in, her Legend will buff her and giving her +1 might. Unfortunately, there's a lot more might where that came from on the Draven side of the board. 5 points to 4 now. Relivia, remember, was down 3 points to start off this game. Now is caught well back up here and is ahead on the race. We are still going to 9. as a reminder. And in fact, if we go to a game 3, we'll go to 9 again, because there is another Aspirants clan we haven't seen yet on the Leona side, but not looking like the most likely outcome, we can say, given the position that Bubble Buddy is currently in against one of the best decks in the format. But still, the game goes on, and units get retreated. Relivia says, you know what? I feel ahead enough. You go ahead. I don't want to get my units done.
I really like this play for a number of reasons. First, you don't want to unnecessarily put some of your units in danger. You're about to have not just the Leona come online, which has the stun mechanic, but you have this Irelia that will come online. And, okay, well, it's also going to be answered by a Falling Star. But before that happened, if you were worried about the Irelia plus the Leona, not leaving anything on the battlefields makes sense. But the other reason that you often want to pull things back as well is if your opponent steps onto the battlefield, you can force combats, draw more cards. You have the Kaisa that will draw cards on the Reconquer. Ultimately, Relivia here is in the driver's seat, down to only 2 runes on the board, but I think that is a fair trade-off for all of this might. We had the Draven played from the champion zone as well, which is up to a casual 8.
Yeah, that double deflect, pretty costly, but still worthwhile, it feels like, to remove one of the biggest threats in the game. So Bubble Buddy going to try and answer back, moves Leona on for the point. Now even, briefly, as is on his Hourglass, is going to be the play. And I do spy a Charm on Bubble Buddy's side. So the question becomes, which unit do I want to try and win a combat against? It seems pretty straightforward to win on right now with your opponent not having any resources available, but definitely don't want to make the mistake if you can help it.
I think if you had enough buffs, then you could deal with the Draven cleanly. That would be the ideal scenario, just because it's the biggest unit. However, with the Leona already having the shield, it would make sense to want to pull that Kaisa in, kind of slow down some of the card draw, and that's exactly what we're going to see.
Charm the Kaisa on in, remove the extra Conquer Draw effect, and, Relivia's going to do the thing. I have shield. Yep, all right, goodbye. Mask of Foresight also actually acting like an additional buff, so if a follow-up Charm could maybe make Leona a little bit bigger. You kind of talked about drip feeding that Mask of Foresight earlier, but as we know, there isn't a follow-up one. And now it's just a question of, basically, is my Thwonk good enough? Which I think on the surface it is. There's only 3 units, and 2 of them are very large, but you can stun both of them.
Now, it is also worth noting, again, the heads-up play from Relivia earlier. By pulling those units back when that Leona walked into the Aspirant's Climb, what happened is there was a stun trigger denial, so there's no buff on it. The Leona right now is just a 4. Yes, it jumps up to a 6 when you attack into it, but we've talked about breakpoints and certain thresholds throughout the broadcast today. There's a big difference between 6 and 7. We're going to have
Zenith Blade.
Yeah, I was going to say the Forerunner is going to get answered by the Zenith Blade, and hey, speaking of that buff, we get that trigger now.
Certainly do. Get to stun the Forerunner, get to win the combat, get to score a point on your opponent's turn. In a game where you were behind on the race, but the points were even, this is actually a nice little way to get ahead, and there's still enough runes available to thwonk on the incoming attack. The mechs that will be made to base will be exhausted, so you don't have to worry about those. So then the question becomes, well, A, what does Relivia have? Because they almost always have something. It's Rebuke. Look at your hand, see there's no not so fast, cry deeply, and accept your loss of combat. Forerunner takes the point, goes up to 6, draws a card thanks to Draven, and all of a sudden the situation that Bubble Buddy manufactured quite well is just undone by the power of the Chaos Bounce spell.
And again, Relivia is back down to just 2 runes, but again, when you've developed so much might previously, you don't really need a lot to operate with.
Certainly don't, and that is 7 points, and as a reminder, we are playing to 8, but there are 2 units, and 2 big units, I might add, holding both battlefields for Relivia. There is Calm Leona, not a bad one as far as units to get ready, but no way to offensively stun. That's one of the downsides of Thwonk. It's a much better defensive spell, but you can't actually, unless you have yellow Leona rollicking around with you, which is the dream. This Calm Leona's ability to make units very small when you stun them only matters when you stun them at turn.
So just winning combat over the Ferris Forerunner is still possible because of Mask. There will still be the Thwonk left up available, but not with Repeat. So the game is not immediately over. However, Relivia will just need to conquer over top of this Leona on the following turn. And unfortunately, baby bots are spawning here. These mechs are going to be created from the Death Knell trigger of the Ferris Forerunner. This is very interesting. We're going to see just a discipline now.
And for Charm, maybe,
yeah.
is the only out. And instead, it's a shake of the hand, and it's 2-0 for Draven. Relivia are going to stay undefeated here through 4 rounds, and Leona. Great deck. Love her so, but that's what happens. Show up to an RQ, try and play your favorite deck, try and win a best of. Sometimes you hit Draven.
Yeah, I do think you are correct. I think Charm was the dig off the discipline there because you needed to get rid of the Pouty Poro with the axe, the 2 mechs, unless there was an additional buff. Then that's the problem, right? There's always still combat tricks. Maybe Relivia draws another Rebuke or something. But just based on board state alone, if you could get it to where it's just the 2 mechs and they come in, obviously Leona with the mask is still going to be bigger. Turns out that 7 is bigger than 6.
Yep.
So
learning a lot today.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's interesting is that Calm is in many ways the domain with a lot of the the combat relevant tricks, stuns, pumps, all those kind of things. And I think you look at Draven. And yes, Draven is good at a lot of different things. I think obviously plenty of combat tricks there, things like Spinning Axe, his signature spell, or signature equipment, I suppose. Obviously Rebuke, a pretty powerful spell, but not necessarily as good as Calm as a domain is at doing those sorts of things. I think Relivia is showing like, you know what? You don't necessarily have to have the tricks that are as good if you just play a bit more patiently. Deploy your units to your base. Just
yes.
Again, Draven's whole thing is I want to win combats. So just set yourself up to win combats. And if that means taking a couple turns off, giving a couple of points away to your opponent, well, if the end result is you winning, doesn't really matter.
Turns out combat tricks is more might.
Pretty good combat trick, as it turns out, making more might. Even if it just comes to more units. We do have an interview though, so we're going to go down over and hear what our winner has to say.
Thanks so much, y'all. Excellent class for that game. And not only an excellent cast, but an excellent game. I'm joined here with Relivia. Congratulations on that very nice 2-0 victory against, what I thought was going to be a little tough matchup. I would think the stun mechanic is a little scary for things like combat tricks, and you want to win those combats, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've never played against a Leona deck before with Draven. I can't say I've tested anything against it. I have played against Leona in the past, maybe some set 1 stuff, so I do know that they were going to be bringing out those stuns. I knew it was going to be difficult for the combat, but hopefully I was able to obviously pull out the combat wins in the end.
So speaking of, obviously you've had a lot of practice, as I can see. Your team probably prepping for the event, as we've seen many people, of course, sporting that around. But you're playing Draven. And the majority of the room, or as we saw especially even last week in Lille, Irelia is out in full force. So I wanted to just pick your brain as our first Draven that we were going to kind of talk to here today. What are you doing to kind of combat against all the Irelias in the field? Because obviously you see a lot of the same Calm cards here in this matchup, but not as much as the Chaos tricks, which is the stuff that you got to utilize and they didn't.
Right. Yeah, the best thing we can do against Aurelia is to keep rebuking and bouncing those Aurelias. That's our best card in the matchup. I also have the one of Switcheroo and a one of Beast Below in the main now, which are additional ways to just guarantee you win that combat against Aurelia. We hope that the Aurelia decks are a little slow so we can get that point tempo lead on them and then get those last final points pushed through. Obviously, Bryn here is a matchup winner, and if you ever can combo Bryn here with Rebuke, it's very hard for them to stop you from scoring 2 points. So typically against Aurelia, you just get to that checkmate position of 6 points. You line up that Bryn here plus Rebuke or Bryn here plus Switcheroo, something like that, and you just push in for the win. So I like my matchup there. It is tough. It's a very tough matchup, but I think we're in a good spot for it.
Well, you're already playing excellently because you're already halfway through today and you're 4-0 now going into round 5 here shortly. But, you brought up the Rebukes. We saw the Spinning Axes, of course, the quick draw, being able to bring those in quickly. You want to win those combats. And it feels like, comparatively before the ban list, people were doing whatever they could to avoid combat. And now you get to kind of take advantage of going back into combat and really taking advantage of it. And less so relying on things like the removal. But that Falling Star play with the, the double, triple, quadruple recycle just to get that Irelia off the board, absolutely immaculate. One of my favorite moments of the game. But my last question I really have for you here, Relivia, is I got to ask you about the experience climb. In game 2, going second, we're going to play to 9 points. In my head, I totally understand it, but can you give me your line of thought on why that's so successful? And it's obviously working all day.
Yeah. So our team's thought process was going first is really important in this game, right? And so when you get to go first and you're on that tempo, it's hard to win from going second. And you obviously, in a best of 3 match, you're going to have a game where you're going to have to go second. So the goal with Aspirant's Climb is just to slow the game down. The idea is that if the game goes longer, you add that extra point, that extra turn, it gives you more time as the player going second to stall out the game. I mean, hypothetically, if you could have a game to 20 points, whoever goes first is going to matter a lot less when the game's going longer. So that's kind of the idea. Extend the game a little bit, give you more time going second to kind of come back into it. And it's something we've tried in other decks, not just Draven. I mean, it's something that we just think that with the loss of Obelisk, that it is probably our favorite going second battlefield in a lot of decks that we're testing.
That sounds like all-star tips for everyone at home. All I gotta say is, again, congratulations. I will say Bubble Buddies successfully bursted. So moving on, proud with your head held high into round 5. Relivia, thanks so much. Congrats again. We're gonna send it back.